Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we are celebrating the 150th episode by delving into one of the most urgent and complex issues that continues to challenge the UK construction sector, namely the critical shortage of skilled workers. As we know, government plans to invest public and private funds worth over $725 billion in infrastructure over the next decade or so. That will decarbonise and secure our energy systems, reboot the nation's transport networks, protect the environment, build 1.5 million new homes and retrofit some 5 million more. The scale of ambition is enormous, but none of it, of course, can happen without the people needed to deliver it. And that's where the newly launched Construction Skills Mission Board comes in, bringing together senior industry leaders, educators, training bodies, government ministers and unions to ensure that the sector can recruit, train and retain the workforce it needs to meet the demands of the decade ahead. My guest today is Mark Reynolds, Chair of the Construction Leadership Council, Executive Chair of construction giant Mace, and also Chair of this new Construction Skills Mission Board. Mark helped CLC to establish the board as a way to support the government's commitment to invest an additional £625 million in construction skills. The goal is clear: to develop and drive a national strategy capable of recruiting an extra 100,000 workers each year, boosting employer confidence to invest, building clear entry pathways, improving access to training, ensuring effective funding and creating reliable, rewarding career structures. So, big ambitions, but what's next? So let's hear more. Mark, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Anthony, thank you very much.
Well, there's lots to talk about, Mark. And to kick off, incredibly, it is 2.5 years since you last joined me on the podcast. And back then in episode 29, we talked about industry productivity challenges. And of course, skills was discussed. So fast forward to episode 150. Are we as an industry in better shape than we were back then?
Doesn't time fly, first of all? Are we in better shape? I think the foundations have been laid for us to improve. If you ask me today, I think we're going through some real challenges. We've been through the planning changes and planning reforms and planning bills. It's been interact. The investment in skills, as we're going to talk about later, is a huge commitment from government. Housing, quite frankly, is struggling. And we're nowhere near going to hit the 1.5 at the moment unless there is radical change. If I'm brutally honest, I can't see that happening at the moment. And the RMI sector, repair, maintenance and improvement sector, needs some support. So the issues with those are, it also ripples and has big impact on manufacturers and merchants. And we see through the CLC, a lot of the merchants and manufacturers are either mothballing facilities or we're still going into administration. So it's not a great time. And I can't see it improving significantly over the next 6 months unless there is dramatic action around housing and government understands they need to put contracts in place rapidly for infrastructure.
Right. And I suppose as I spoke to Mike Reeder, MP, last week, I suppose the industry needs to get itself set up to make sure that it's ready and capable. And the focus on skills today is all part of that. And I flagged your role at the Construction Skills Mission Board. Yeah, so what exactly is the board and why has it been created now?
So let's go back to the how it's conceived. It was conceived through a few people, National Apprentice Week in February last year, where Julian Akinabara walked around a Mace site and I presented 12 of our T-level students and explained that we don't actually have an attraction problem in the industry. We have an absorption problem. And what I mean by that is approximately 100,000 people join the industry every year to be trained. And of those 100,000, about 30,000 apprenticeships, 70,000 are in full-time education. Sadly, those in full-time education, only about 30% get a job.
Right.
30% only get a job. And 50% of the apprenticeships complete their apprenticeships as training. So you could broadly say around about 50,000 people don't get jobs or qualified every year.
Well, that was a point that you made at the last year's Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit, that mismatch between supply and demand. What is the solution? How do you move towards a demand-led economy?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The recent budgets, to go back 2 budgets, have not helped. So national insurance, inheritance tax constraints around business property relief and planning have not helped. I think there's been a lot of good work around planning, and employers have lost confidence, quite frankly. And we see that more so in the housing sector than anywhere before. And our recent mission board early in the new year, where we presented a number of proposals for work placements, and Jenny Daly quite rightly pulled us up and said, we're not recruiting.
Right.
And we're not building homes to the scale that we want to and like to because of affordability, viability and demand. And therefore, we aren't taking people on. So what we now need to look at is a system that allows us to train people so we do know it's going to come back. So housing, the target of 300,000, we're achieving around about 120,000, 130,000 in 25. 26 will be about 160. And then by 28, 29, could be as high as 280, 300,000. So suddenly you're going to have a massive demand for skills. So
Right.
we will move away from being an absorption problem to a skills problem. The way to solve that now is to get people trained, and the government are putting in packages in place. The DWP have put a number of packages, not just for construction, but they also did the same for other sectors where they're allowing universal credits to continue to be paid for people in training.
Right. Because we have got the 10-year infrastructure strategy, and we've got a pipeline from NISTA, and we've also got this £625 million investment in skills, which has been set out. Is that enough to actually start to move the dial then, from your perspective?
Well, again, we had great contact with ministers and Secretary of State. So one of the last meeting I had with Pat McFadden and Jackie Smith was, if we're not careful, we're throwing good money after bad here.
Right.
And we need to target this in the right place such that we have those skills where we need it. So that's the role of the mission board, is to identify what interventions we can make around training and work placements, and how we can connect those with employers. And the big programs are the easiest to start off with.
So what, in your mind, makes this board different, more effective potentially than previous efforts, previous initiatives in this particular area to try and close this and address this skills gap?
Collaboration, number one. Collaboration between government departments who have been excellent. DFE, DWP, with the changes there, they've been excellent in working with us. We have the training providers around the table. So the training providers are becoming much more joined up and working together, whether it's FE, HE or private sector providers. Industry from the full spectrum, from housing, infrastructure, repair, maintenance, improvement, specialist suppliers. We've never had so many people. We meet every 6 weeks.
Right.
We meet weekly with the working group. It's pretty intensive. And we're looking at those interventions that are going to make a difference.
So it's a cast of thousands in there. I mentioned.
No, it's not thousands.
Well,
It's a pretty big network. But
well, who? How do you decide who on the board? I mean, what are the criteria for being on the board?
Well, first of all, it's someone who's prepared to actually put the effort in,
Right.
free of charge.
Right. Because you're talking about practical outcomes.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is not a talking shop.
No, this is not a talking shop, and this is tough. Connecting effectively those people being trained at the moment, 100,000, with getting the right skills in the right locations, with the jobs at the end is really tough.
Yeah.
And just to sort of give an example, where we have these big programs, we have a great catalyst. So Nigel Cann at Sizewell, he's part of the board looking at the energy sector. He's been absolutely brilliant because he's leading the way and setting up a training hub for Sizewell. That links with Suffolk College, and that becomes a hub and a spoke. He's also connecting National Grid, Anglian Water, and we've said, look, why don't we use his training, his hub, to actually help NHP program. So he's starting to build those
new hospital program.
Yeah, new hospital program. And so what we're trying to do is build that network. And it's easier. We have this strategy around that is a more local type strategy with a mix of regional approach. Then you've got the national ones where we've got specialist skills. And the real challenge we're seeing, and we have Steve Rotherham from Liverpool, the Mayor of Liverpool. He's absolutely brilliant. He's taken on the challenge around setting up the mayoral type approach, which is making sure that we've got more the SME focus. So we're trying to build this capability and join everyone together to build this massive network, but in a coordinated way.
I suppose the advantage that people like Nigel have kind of got at Sizewell is he's got a very well defined program. He can see stretching out ahead of him what work he's got. And you talk about 100,000 new workers a year. It's a huge target. I mean, is that aligned with the 10-year infrastructure strategy's goal? I mean, I'm trying to get my head around, I suppose, how you make that balance between having the jobs that are there for these trained workers and actually making sure that they are there for when the jobs come on online.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. And let me sort of give you some background. January 25, we sat down with Darren Jones in number 10 with Matt Pennycook, number 11 with Matt Pennycook, and said, look, we need a dynamic pipeline. 6 months later, NISTA produced, John Loveday and Maria Roby and the team there produced the first infrastructure pipeline. That is now, we're seeing an update soon, and we get a demo in a week or so's time of how they've introduced workforce planning.
Right.
So absolutely, workforce planning will be linked to that. Johnny's also on the mission board. So they play a really important part.
So that's actually linking the jobs that are available to the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's making, are you already seeing a difference, are you?
No, look, we're putting the foundations in place. So we've got several parallel streams working at the present time. What we've got to do is get the people in training at the present time, connected with the job opportunities and particularly with work placements.
Yeah.
That's the challenge at the moment is getting employers to take on those people currently being trained because they want them work ready.
Yeah.
You can't ask for someone to be work ready if you're not willing to train them.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Mike Reeder, MP, who chairs the all-party parliamentary group on infrastructure.
Yeah.
In fact, he's an ex-Mace.
We know
director.
Mike well.
He was talking about the industry needing to use the government's pipeline to get its own house in order. And he said there's no point in kind of campaigning that the work isn't there. You've got to actually build those supply chains capable of delivering. Is he right?
Absolutely. And let's give some examples. New hospital program. Again, we were involved with the new hospital program through our consultancy business and with other partners. And what's important there is that we know what that program is. We can then start appointing the contractors to actually build those hospitals, and they can then start planning where the work is at a local, regional, and national level. And we can build that capability. So if we can put that into the pipeline and we can put it into contract, because people ain't got certainty. When it's in contract, you've got a lot more certainty. Stick to the program. Do not deviate from the program. So unlike we had at Euston, we get a phone call to say stop the job. That is very unhelpful for planning your skills and planning your business. If you then, as high speed 2 at Euston, that is just to clarify that point, or slow a job down, that's not helpful either because again, that's another challenge. But if we can start building that pipeline that we've got confidence, certainty in contract, we can then align investment. And it's not just investment in people; it's investment in capital investment around materials. Developing materials, developing plant and equipment, using AI, and taking that forward to robotics. All these sort of exciting things, which is really going to transform our industry.
Yeah. Well, you're actually living the strategy here at Mace.
I'm living the dream.
What are you doing here at Mace? You in terms of your pipeline for training, apprenticeships, qualifications, how are you tackling this issue at Mace? What lessons can you share?
Well, we're doing many things. So let's just sort of talk about how digital has evolved in the last 3-5 years. We very much took an enterprise approach to our data. So really critical there is we could see everything with this in the business. That absolutely was a fundamental foundation for us to progress to the next level. We have invested in AI tools. Some have been very expensive. We've introduced Copilot across over 1,200 of our colleagues and seeing the benefits there. But actually, the next iteration is going to move us on, and that's going to make a big difference for us. The next challenge is how do we then look at automation and robotics, and I think there are examples where that's happening already. I can see that being the next transformational change for us, which will make us more efficient and safer.
And this is all new skills that are coming into the sector.
It's completely new skills.
But presumably you've also got a whole load of traditional skills which you need to make sure that you've got those fundamentally underpinning your business. We're
always going to need the heritage skills. We're always going to need the craft skills. But it can be done differently and it can be done more efficiently. You can't. It's not going to be easy to solve the repair, maintenance, improvement sector overnight. But there are real product innovations that will speed things up, and the manufacturers have a huge role to play in that.
No, well, I mean, you mentioned the new hospital program. Industrialisation is really going to be playing a huge role there. Let's talk a bit more about your day job. We mentioned Mace, you're executive chair of Mace. The firm's certainly going through some serious changes here. The recent headlines have been the separation of the Mace Consult business from the construction business, following investment by Goldman Sachs. Where are you with that change? It's all coming to a head now, I imagine.
Yeah, very close. So this is a culmination of a journey since 2022, where we were restructuring the organisation such that we could take the steps we've been taking at the back end of we started planning and working with advisors at the back end of 24. 25, we selected Goldman Sachs through a relatively short process, Goldman Sachs Alternatives. They were absolutely aligned with us for what we want to do with Mace Consult, which was really about growth and becoming the leading global program manager.
Right.
And that was an important reason why we formed that partnership. They are going to be 75% investors in the business, and a few of us will remain 25%. What that gives us is the platform for Mace Consult to grow at a global level. And it gives us the opportunity for Mace Construct to be very focused around the construction business and invest. And we saw the challenges back in 2020 when we had our FM business and we sold that to the management, where you have to make choices and it becomes a compromise where you invest. And actually, we were choosing to invest more in Consult for the growth of Consult, and it was at the detriment of Construct.
Yeah. Well, you have to remind yourself that the business has only been around, 1998?
We actually started in 1990.
Oh, right. Okay.
At the worst time of recession. So that was Ian Macpherson.
But then, you're now, over 3 billion turnover. I mean, you look back, it's a huge achievement.
Yeah, it's like we're on a part of the journey, and I'm only a custodian of the business, and we want to see the business grow and thrive, which is why we took the path of separation. Because one was holding the other one back. And
of course, the next thing is the name change. Any idea what the construction business is going to be called?
No idea. If anyone's got any ideas, please send them through, because I'm always open to ideas.
But what does this separation enable you to do that the single firm wouldn't have been able to do?
Well, sadly, what the industry doesn't actually value construction at the level it should do, but it does value consultancy. And I can understand the reason for that, because of volatility around risk, and what we need to do is make sure risk is appropriately shared between clients and contractors. But as Construct, we have an opportunity to really take the business forward with that area. But one thing that we found over the last few years, as we grew the consultancy business, we were becoming constrained and not able to work in certain sectors. So defence, for example, because of our role with DIO, we really couldn't work in defence. Because of our role in NHP, we really couldn't work in NHP. Because of our role on prisons, we really couldn't work on prisons. I've just named some huge government programmes there as a deliverer. And look, the government needs strong, resilient organisations like Mace. And the exciting thing for us and our people is that we can then focus the Construct business on the Construct business and invest in that. They can choose what they do, and we can bring those leaders through.
So it will actually be two very distinct businesses.
They're two different businesses with separate ownership. there is always going to be a close collaboration. And if anyone's been involved with any separation of two organisations, there is a period where one supports the other, and Mace Group will support it with all its back office facilities and equipment, and particularly digital and IT.
Clearly a difficult global market right now. I mean, how do you navigate the economic turbulence that we've seen? I mean, the cost of, you mentioned, the cost of employment, the cost of materials, the challenge of politics, the challenge of planning. What really keeps you awake at night, Mark?
Oh dear, geopolitical. I mean, whoever thought we would really be concerned about the geopolitical environment? And for the last 3 years, we have been keeping an eye on that. And to begin with, not thinking it'd have much impact. There is no doubt about it. With Trump being in power, it is a roller coaster. And it's very volatile, whether it's just currency fluctuations or funding being pulled in certain areas. They're the same issues that we see in the UK, we see globally.
Yeah.
And you have to be resilient to that. We've made some good choices. Purposely, we made those choices based on lessons of the past. And so far, we've been in touchwood. We've been in pretty good shape and resilient against some downturns. But, you just have to try and navigate through those paths and choose the best bet.
Well, I'm heading over to New York in April for the next TIP conference there, and I imagine that your Hudson project there that's navigating some serious politics. I imagine
it is.
Yeah. It's an
And
interesting.
I'll say no more.
Anyway, I imagine that you keep yourself sane by keeping swimming. Still doing that?
I'm still training hard and getting in. Although I dropped last month, I only achieved about 100,000 in January, and I normally...
This is meters?
Meters
swim.
100,000 metres in a month. I normally bang out about 120,000 in January.
Good. Well,
Work got in the way.
We presume you've got a world championship to defend and all that.
No, not this year, unfortunately. I did that last year, and I lost my titles last year.
Oh my God. Well, let's gloss over that. Let's get back to skills. I mean, I mentioned, you held the first meeting last year, and you're having them regularly. I mean, what would you say are the key outcomes? I identify those 5 areas: confidence to invest, pathways, access to provision, funding, and careers. I mean, what are the most urgent areas that you're tackling then?
I wish there was one silver bullet that we could say from skills. Ultimately, what we want to do is ensure that we have the capability and the capacity to deliver what we're going to need in the next 5 years. That is going to take time. So to keep that as a simple North Star, we want to have the capability, enough people who know what they're doing with the skills and competency. A lot of great work has been done through the super sector work, which was initiated on the back of Grenfell, quite frankly, and about the competency work. That's really taken on. And credit to that team, and it's a vast team who have done some fantastic work looking at the curriculum, working with training providers, working with trade associations, and working with industry to make sure that we got the right competency in place. That's a huge foundation that we couldn't move forward if we didn't put that in place 4 or 5 years ago. One of the interesting things, and again, government policy, it's great when you're reading these things and it comes out in a policy. We really do believe that passporting is going to be vital for our workforce going forward. So we have a good platform through the CSCS card and the Alliance CSCS Alliance. We can use that to demonstrate competency.
Interesting, though, I imagine that when you're dealing with government, there's so many different government departments still that have got an interface with construction. How do you bring all that lot together to get them to sing on a single hymn sheet, I suppose?
Well, most people probably wouldn't recognise I am smiling here. It takes hard work, and whilst it's challenging, it's not that difficult. You just got to be able to pick up the phone to a director general in a certain part of the department where we've got a responsibility. You've got to be able to sit in front of a minister and say, I need your help and you need to help. Both. And if I use my 2 beacon of examples, building safety was a thing that we introduced to the CLC as a priority 3 years ago. We did that because it was a hygiene issue. the work with MHCLG on building safety, it took us a few years to get to get to that tipping point. But we did last year with Alex Norris coming in as a minister, monthly meetings with the Director General, moving building safety regulator out of HSE into MHCLG, putting the innovation unit in place, Andy Rowe coming in, Charlie Pugsley, working through with them, working with Catherine Adams in MHCLG to look at the single construction regulator. That got published, the prospectus got published just before Christmas. All of those is a fantastic example where industry and government work together. And what we're going to need is policy, legislation, and industry working together to make changes. And, as we're talking to Judith Hackett in a industry safety steering group yesterday, it's gone from a bit of a tell discussion with us to actually, this is what we've got to do together.
Yeah. Well, that idea of the industry needing to actually take some direct action itself, it came up when I spoke to Matt Cannon, who the chief executive of Clancy last month. I mean, he talked about businesses needing to get more from its current skills levy, for instance. The money it's putting in, it needs to make sure that it has got a strategy to actually access that training. I mean, how do you make sure that these strategies do actually move from the policy level down to the SMEs and the fragmented supply chains, where perhaps many of the skills gaps are really acute?
Yeah, it's brutal measurement. I mean, we see the data quarterly coming through from DFE, DWP. At one point, they were actually going to take the data analysts away from us.
Right.
So we had a very robust conversation, and they put them back in place. We need to have properly funded. They have the ability to coordinate and pull that data.
Because they tell you basically where the gaps are likely.
Yeah, look, we know, plumbing, carpentry, electrical, they are the top three trades. And actually, installers, they've been falling over the last 2 years. So we know there's going to be a shortage in those areas, and we need to invest and promote those. But actually, it goes down to employers, not employing. Yeah.
Well, Matt also talked about the power of direct employment in the sector. I mean, is that the solution for you? Do we have the pipeline of certainty, I suppose, to enable companies to build those direct employment?
And we kind of get what we sow. If we just want short-term contracts and we want to race to the bottom, then no one's going to invest. If we really want, high-quality, safe buildings that actually are more economic in the medium, even in the short term, then we need to invest in appropriate contracts that effectively allows direct employment and encourages people to employ, train and develop their workforce.
Yeah. And that means having those absolute guarantee, well, not absolute guarantees, but at least some kind of visibility of certainty that there's going to be the work.
Yeah.
One issue you mentioned a few times is your work that you're doing with the new hospital program and this whole idea of industrializing the industry. Are we pressing ahead fast enough with you've been down an industrialized path, mate. You've had your fingers burned. You've got the scars to prove it. Are we now moving so that we're actually getting to a more modern construction sector, factory built? And
some are, some aren't. It's like all these things. It's like are we there? The answer, if you said to me, are we generally as an industry, I would say no. We're at the bottom of the Mount Everest rather than base camp.
Yeah,
we've got a lot to do, and unless we get that certainty of pipeline, it isn't going to work. And also we have to be cognizant that when the pipeline ends, like the PRISM program ends, then that industrialisation will have to move on to something else.
Yeah,
and therefore things like the hospital program and looking at those sub-assemblies, I don't think volumetric today is the answer. I think sub-assemblies is the way we should do that in a way that automotive has developed over time, and that's where we can build those supply chains with SMEs.
Well, yeah,
and we can take things forward. So it's about building that catalogue of components which are tested, safe and robust.
Which of course is what Ruth Todd's doing on the small
on the SMRs,
which of course is a philosophy she brought over from the hospital program. Are you seeing commitments then from the public sector clients or major employers that are now saying, we get it, we know how we need to support this industry?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. And some have had, some challenges as well with the products that have been installed. So DfE have had some challenges with some of their products. Prism program, I think, is a huge success. I think it is the beacon program, and our teams were. I'm going to say this. We were the genesis of how that really worked and evolved those contracts. NHP will do exactly the same, and I think it's a really exciting program, and it will become a world-leading program.
I mean, is there an argument that says the problem is more about industry productivity and work culture rather than just the raw numbers of skills that are going in there? I mean, I mentioned industrialization. We've been trying to transform the sector, and the industry really, there's a lot of people, maybe, I don't know, do you agree, sitting at the sidelines waiting for change and rather than getting at the table and trying to drive it forward?
Well, I think it goes back to measuring. If you really want to change, I'd start measuring. We do that in our business in terms of a MACE person, and I'll use construction because it's the easiest. A MACE construction manager, and I mean that in the broadest sense of terms. Anyone who works involved in a construction project, they will manage between 1.5 and £2 million worth of revenue per year. We can get up to 3 million. That's a huge difference. That means we can actually take on more work with less people to do it more efficiently, which boosts productivity. If we then look at people on the ground, if we can increase GVA per worker hour from £75 to £80 on a project to 200 to 250, it will be dramatic.
Yeah. So there's a real metrics that you can look at to see whether or not...
We look at that all the time.
Yeah.
And if my project directors don't know, it's a bit embarrassing.
Right. And so for the industry, the wider industry, how do you know whether this new skills mission board strategy is actually creating change behaviour on the ground? Will we see it in colleges? Will we see it in job sites, in boardrooms? Where will that change be?
Well, you'll see it in the numbers. So if 100,000 people are still joining the sector, and instead of 50% getting long-term jobs, 65% get long-term jobs to 75. That will be. That's what we've got to do, is keep driving that change. Every time I have a mission board, I open up by saying our role is to make sure that everyone who wants a long-term career in built environment and construction gets a meaningful career.
Right. Every
person.
Yeah.
Will I achieve that or not? Unlikely, but always set an ambitious goal.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the legacy of that. I mean, you're chair of both MACE and CLC and the mission board. You're clearly, personally, incredibly invested in the success of the mission. What for you then remains the most broken element of the current setup?
God, that's an interesting question. You didn't tell me that was you were going to throw on that, mate. What is broken? I don't think that there is lots of things that aren't working. What is broken is where there is a problem, there is a lack of collaboration between government and industry to sort out the problem. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I have sat in Secretary of State meetings this year, and I've sat into Cabinet Office strategic supplier meetings where both government are on transmit and industry are on transmit. And my advice in those meetings is we both know the problem, but none of us are prepared to roll up our sleeves and solve it.
Right.
If we were able to do that in the same way we did with building safety and the same way we are tackling this with skills, we would solve the housing issue. We would solve the affordable and social housing crisis. We would even go so far as solving the social crisis that we have in the UK today. So, the inequalities of people living in poor homes, can't get jobs, it goes across that. We need to start addressing this from a social level rather than a building level.
So this is the industry working together effectively to bring themselves up to compete at a higher level.
Yeah, it's wrong that we have so many people who are not in employment. It's wrong that the welfare state is under so much pressure, and if we were able to collaborate on those issues, we would solve those problems. Yeah. We are brilliant engineers and we're brilliant thinkers in our sector.
So, two final things to ponder over. Who would you say is missing from this discussion at the moment when it comes to the mission board? You've got a lot of people involved. Is anyone or any sector or any bit of the industry that's missing?
No, they're not missing. I think it's time and it's the challenges. One thing that everyone has to applaud the people who support the CLC. Mm-hmm. They all do it free of charge.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I've always been keen, there's enough trade associations out there. We don't need any more trade associations. If anything, you need fewer. What we do need to do is use them and industry leaders willing to step up and help drive industry change. So I'm not going to be critical of any one part, but I think it's about bringing those industry leaders together. And if I use housing is fragmented, even in its own sector. If we can get the right groups together mm-hmm. from the social and affordable side, and I do mean the people who've in the charities working with affordable RPs, working with private sector to work with government to change a Section 106 agreement rather than deliver all of the social affordable housing through private sector. It's not working. Yeah. It needs to change.
And 5 years from now, then, what will you better say about the Skills Mission Board in terms of what it's achieved?
I hope I'm no longer saying we have an absorption problem.
Right.
Out of all of this, we talk about a skills problem. Which we really truly have a skills problem, which is we don't have enough people wanting to join our industry and be trained. Mm-hmm. That actually would be a really, outstanding achievement. Industry needs to be, plan, invest in its people, and recruit people. And we've got to create the right environment for that to happen.
Certainly, there's a great opportunity for changing the industry right now. We mentioned the difficult market conditions, but the ambition is certainly huge. So, Mark, really interesting challenges you've got, really interesting conversation. I always love your passion and enthusiasm for the sector, and long may it continue. So thanks so much for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Sadly, though, that's all we've got time for on the podcast right now, but there is more in the pipeline and more to discuss as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information and all the latest podcasts, all 150 of them, to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Mark, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.